welcome to another history special. And you join me in Colchester. I'm going to take a walk around the Gatehouse, the only remaining structure that has survived from the great Abbey of St John that once used to stand in Colchester. The abbey was founded in 1095 by a man called Udo de Ree, or Udo Dapifer, as he's often referred to. Dapifer is Latin for High Steward, and he was one of William the Conqueror's trusted men. And it's said that when he died in the year 1120 in France, his body was brought back here for burial. The abbey's had an interesting history, including a large fire which destroyed most of the abbey back in 1133. The abbey and some of the outbuildings around it were repaired, and the gatehouse dates from around about the year 1400. The walls of the abbey were strengthened following an upheaval some years earlier in 1381, an event that history recognises today as the Peasants' Revolt. Back in 1534, King Henry VIII set about one of his new policies, the Act of Supremacy, and this is where he made himself head of the Church of England, breaking from Rome. And by 1539, the last abbot here had been executed and the monastery had been dissolved. But I'll talk more about the last abbot a little later on in the video, because he met rather a sticky end here in Colchester. Once the monastery had been dissolved, it all reverted into private hands, and by the 17th century it was owned by the Lucas family. Now, Sir Charles Lucas was a royalist commander, and he commanded the royalist forces during the Siege of Colchester. It was his forces which were inside the walled town, and naturally the parliamentarians attacked the gatehouse, and there's evidence of that battle inside the actual gatehouse. But here up here on the green, this is where the parliamentarians had their cannons, some culverines up here, which fired into the town centre, destroying many of the buildings, especially in the St Botolph's area. But now let's head into the gatehouse and take a look at some of the features inside, including some of the damage from the attack during the English Civil War. Walking into the gatehouse here really is quite impressive. Fantastic vaulted sort of ceiling. It's quite nice looking up at that. And it's a part of the damage here on the downside. You can see where a cannonball hit it during the English Civil War. And this place was attacked because obviously this was the Lucas family home. Their home was actually just inside the gatehouse. And so this obviously produced a viable target for the parliamentarians who were surrounding the town. But on the left here is a guardhouse. Little gateway here going to the guardhouse. There'd been a ladder going to the upstairs where the guards would have slept. But it's quite nice here. It is still very impressive. Heavily restored in Victorian times. And in 1660 there was a prison here as well, housing Dutch prisoners of war. But considering all the history that's happened here, it really is in remarkably good condition. I'll walk through to the other side. Just round the corner here is a door which goes into the upper level. And it's closed at the moment, you can't get in. It's very rarely open, I'm told. But I did manage to go up last year. So here's some footage of the inside of the gatehouse. great shame that there's no information boards upstairs or any artefacts, but maybe one day they will put a little exhibition area up there. But just at the back here is a interesting section of wall made up of artefacts that have been discovered during the archaeological excavations of the former garrison site here. And there's a blue plaque to a Margaret Cavendish, 1623 to 1673. Playwright, poet, novelist, scientist and philosopher. Born and lived in a house near this site. It's very interesting to see blue plaques. But during the lifetime of the abbey, 32 abbots have presided here. The first was a man called Hugh of York, appointed back in 1104. And the last was Thomas Marshall, who left the post in 1539. Now, Marshall was descended from the Beche family in Colchester. They were a family of pewter smiths. There's also historical evidence which links him to Salisbury, as a man once lived in Marshall House in Beche Lane. Now, there was another abbot of Shrewsbury, a man called Richard Baker, and he used to sign his name Richard Beche or Richard Baker. So where did Thomas Marshall come from? Was it Colchester or was it Shrewsbury? I don't know, but the history books do, and the tourist guides here do put him down as a pewter smith from Colchester. So I'd like to think that perhaps he did come from here. But he certainly died here. Now, when Henry VIII set about the Act of Supremacy in 1534, Beche was very critical, and he spoke out in support of John Fisher and Thomas More at their execution in 1535. He supported them, and it brought his name to the authorities as well. And in 1538 he was arrested. He was imprisoned in the Tower of London for a while, and then brought to Colchester for his trial. That trial was in the Moot Hall. That now stands, well, used to stand where our current town hall actually stands, in the middle of the High Street. And from there he was led up here to his execution. And that execution involved the worst punishment that could be given to anybody. That of drawing, hanging and quartering. I imagine that wasn't too pleasant to suffer, and certainly equally unpleasant to witness. But they were the punishments in those days, along with burning at the stake. But just where did his execution take place? Now, the information boards here put his execution on the green in front of the Gatehouse. But I'm wondering whether it might not actually have been inside the walls of the abbey. Because the history books state that the execution took place on Demesne lands. Now, those were lands that the Lord kept for his own use, so they perhaps land his private quarters within the grounds of the abbey. But in these days it's used to mean the territory belonging to the abbey. So there's a strong case, I suppose, for his execution to actually be in the grounds of the abbey. Now, the abbey has changed a lot today compared to when the actual abbey was built. All the grounds here have changed, and today it's the sports and social club for the garrison officers. But it's a great shame that history hasn't been kind to Colchester in many ways, because there could still be some remains of an abbey buildings here today, which are visible. There's the St Botolph's Abbey, which is visible, despite the history there and the bombardment that abbey took during the English Civil War. It's a great shame that nothing survives up here. But there we are, the Abbey, Gatehouse, the former Abbey of St John's, looking rather nice in the morning sunshine. But this is where I end this video. So thank you so much for watching. and we'll see you again soon for another history special somewhere else.